En el episodio número 15, dos figuras de talla internacional llegan a Canal 13. El joven actor Justice Smith cuenta su historia como protagonista de la nueva y taquillera Detective Pikachu durante su paso por Colombia y repasa algunos de sus papeles en una joven y prometedora carrera, primero en la serie The Get Down de Baz Luhrmann para Netflix y más adelante en la película Jurassic World. Y desde Londres, luego de una extensa gira para promover su segundo álbum Forever, el dúo Jungle se detiene un momento antes de su show en la ciudad de Bogotá. Un actor y dos músicos, Justice Smith y Josh y Todd de Jungle, son mis dos invitados muy especiales al episodio número 15 de El Podcast por Canal 13.
When did you arrive?
2 days ago, I think. Yeah.
Is the hide getting to you already, or?
Yes, it is. We walked here, and I felt like I ran a marathon. I was breathing so fast.
And you come from LA, so
yeah,
you know it's pretty flat out there.
It's pretty low, yeah, low to the ground, sea level.
Yeah. Hey, listen, before we get on the Pokemon Detective Pikachu interview, I must say that I loved you on the Get Down.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so nice.
I mean, that was so great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, what was it like to work with Baz Luhrmann? Before we get into it,
he's incredible. He is so how do I put it? Creatively intuitive and has all of these ideas, and surprisingly also just as collaborative as well. Like I never felt like he was like making me fit into his vision. He kind of was like talking to me, and we were creating something together. And he's really down to earth too. He's so prestigious, so you don't think that he'd be like that, but he's so down to earth.
Yeah, the whole thing about him being prestigious has a lot to do also with the way you feel him through his movies. You know? The color, the bombast.
It's loud, yeah. It's very theatrical. He always, with his TV shows and Get Down was his first TV show, but with all of his projects, he doesn't like that kind of media where it feels like you're looking through the keyhole watching people have problems. He likes to put on a show. He wants you to have an experience, a theatrical experience when you watch his movies.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. And talking about theatricality and drama, once I sit and start watching Detective Pokemon and Detective Pikachu, I feel that about you. I feel the theatricality of an actor, an up-and-coming actor who can do really well two really hard things to do, you know, comedy and drama at the same time. It really moved me how you approached this role. What was it like for you to grab those two things and do them really well?
It was difficult. Rob Letterman, our director, told me that that's what he was looking for, was an actor who could do both. And I've never felt like I was comedically inclined. I think that I can be funny, but it's always on accident. It's hard for me to take a line and make it funny. But I realized I was in like on an improv team in my high school, and like I had studied comedy for a long time, and I realized that a lot of it is very similar to drama, which is just playing the truth of the circumstance, just heightened, you know, and that always kind of gets the laugh. I also usually my comedic crutch is playing the straight man or being as dry as possible. I find that that's easier to do on a whim than to like be, you know, the clown or the loud guy. But I mean, I definitely tried. I have to say that. That's a huge compliment. But
yeah, cool. Now, what I'm trying to say is you're pretty good at both. You know,
I appreciate it.
It's crazy that you don't feel like you're not that good at comedy, because at the very beginning, the very first scenes of Detective Pikachu, you made us laugh at the theater, and it was natural, you know. But then when you started, you know, crying in some of the scenes and talking a little bit about humanizing that character, it also moves you to a point where you forget a little bit about I guess the fantasy of it all.
Yeah.
You know?
And that was important to us too. Rob had set out to make sure that all of the backdrop for which these Pokemon are contrasted against was as real as possible. That's why we didn't shoot on green screen. We shot on location. We tried to use as many practical effects as we could. We shot on film. We gave it this gray cityscape film noir aesthetic. We had the actors talk over each other, be loose, everything that we could to counteract the magical realism that is Pokemon, you know? Because when you have a movie that's just CGI,
I know.
it's just magic, it's just fantasy, that gets boring in the same way that if you have a movie that's just sad actors talking about sad things, you know, that there is a balance. Life is a balance of both. And I love how I'm talking about life in terms of the Pokemon movie, but life is a balance of both, and so every film should also be a balance of both.
That's interesting and challenging in a world where CGI takes more and more over movies, and not only that, over acting as well, which was my next question: how you deal with the challenges of being an actor and being a dramatic actor after doing the Get Down and coming into this fantastic story, what it's like to prepare for interacting with Pikachu, with whom we've interacted on a very bi-dimensional kind of way, you know?
Yeah, it's difficult. I had some practice when I did Jurassic World because there was a lot of CGI characters in that. That was kind of easier because all I had to do was run away screaming. And then in this, I actually had to like interact face to face and respond in real time. So that you know, there are challenges that come with that. But you know, I learned when I was like training to be an actor, you have to do like monologues, which are essentially scenes without a scene partner. And you have to imagine that your scene partner is there and how they're responding to you and what they're doing with their face. And it kind of just felt like being in acting school again when I was doing this movie, because 75% of the movie is me talking to myself. And so in order to do that, I had to, one, discuss with Rob what exactly is Pikachu doing, and two, make sure that I had a vision in my head of exactly what I see in his eyes, exactly the expressions he's making, you know, that, and in addition to where he is in the room and how much he weighs and like all the like technical stuff. But yeah, it was just overall the experience was just this like profound use of the imagination, which kind of brought me to like being a kid again when I was playing Pokemon, which was fun because it was just like the whole project was just like being a kid.
Yeah. That's crazy. Beyond the universal acclaim of Pokemon as this staple of pop culture, how do you think it will transcend in the future?
What do you mean by that? Like,
yeah, how do you think audiences will relate to this movie in 5 or 10 years?
That's a really good question. I'm not really sure. I think that Pokemon fans, it's definitely a milestone for the Pokemon universe. So Pokemon fans will always track it as the first live action Pokemon movie. And if there happens to be a sequel or multiple sequels, then maybe we can like dig out our place in kind of the pop culture zeitgeist. But for people who don't know anything about Pokemon, which is unfathomable to me because it's such a pop culture phenomenon, for people who don't know anything about Pokemon, there is at the center of this story a very relatable human narrative that I feel like anybody can see themselves in, and hopefully that is impactful enough to kind of stay with them. And but I know that it's always difficult to be introduced to a new fandom and a new universe, so I wouldn't be surprised if non-pre-existing Pokemon fans, people who weren't fan of the franchise before see this movie and then are like, okay, cool, what's next? You know, I wouldn't be surprised. But also, hopefully, if we do make more sequels, then we can kind of hook them in.
Now, that's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see the new fans coming in.
Yeah, exactly. You know?
Yeah. Because that's another thing that I'd like to ask about what you feel the old fans are going to get out of this experience, what their key takeaways are going to be, how comfortable they're going to feel with this live action experience.
I think it's something that the Pokemon fans have wanted for a long time. I know I wanted it for a long time. I used to Google what Pokemon looked like in real life, like fan art of like people's renditions of what they thought Pokemon would look like if they were real. And I played the games and I had the cards, and I had always wanted, as a kid, I wanted a real life Pokemon. And everybody in my generation wanted the same. So I think the Pokemon company heard that and were like, well, we need to give the people what they want. This is obviously what they wanted for a long time. So I think it's definitely meeting demand in that sense. And it's also, I don't know, what I find so beautiful about this film and about the Pokemon IP in general is the way that it creates a cross-generational community. There are people in their 30s who have families now, who grew up with Pokemon, loving Pokemon,
right,
who can bond with the newer generations, like people who are 10, over some like this mutual passion. Like that's beautiful to me. You know, I can bond with my 9-year-old sister and be like, oh, the new Pokemon generation are not as good as the old, you know, like, or what, and discuss. I don't know, this it's amazing. I don't know if that's been done before. Maybe it has been done before with like comic books or whatever, but it's definitely something that blows my mind, that community that's created over a mutual passion.
Your character is viewed, in spite of some of the moments in the movie where humankind is seen as evil, as a great guy. You know, your character's a great guy in that movie. What's your take on the state of humankind nowadays?
Oh, Jesus.
You know, where do you see humankind headed? You know,
Yeah.
given the fact that it is portrayed as evil in the movie by some of the fictional characters, but yet you have this really nice guy being portrayed by yourself.
I feel like the Pokemon franchise has always embraced this allegory for animal rights and the way that we treat animals and species that don't necessarily speak the same language as us. And I feel like if animals could talk, they might be saying the same thing that Pokemon say in the movie, at least the Pokemon that can talk, what they say in the movie, which is like, humans are bad, they're innately bad, they treat us bad, they keep us in captivity, and they use us for their own personal gain. And so I think that it's not that black and white, and which is what the movie is trying to say, and which is what the past Pokemon movies were trying to say as well, is that you can't really overgeneralize humanity as all good or all bad.
It's cool to hear you say that.
Yeah.
Because it's like we live in this world of such, you know,
black and white. Yeah.
Polar opposites all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and it's great to know that the movie's subtext has a lot to do with reaching the middle.
It's finding that nuance. And it's definitely, I think it's okay to be mad and it's okay to be angry. A lot of people are angry in terms of, I mean, in many ways, but if we're talking about like animal rights or like rights for Pokemon in this sense, a lot of people are angry and they have a right to be so because there's a lot of bad people. There are a lot of bad people. But, and I understand when that button is pushed over and over again, how you can become reactionary and you can become like, why aren't we doing anything about these creatures? Why aren't we helping them? Humanity is innately evil. I see that like jump. I see that process of thinking. But I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't think it's an objective fact.
There's also a lot of environmentalism going on in the movie sometimes.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. There's actually a joke though. I don't want to spoil the joke, but
Yeah, let's not.
yeah. There's a very funny joke about that. So the Pokemon universe has always kind of been a metaphor for those kind of things, environmental rights and animal rights, and which is crazy because the games are based off of collecting these creatures and battling them. But then if you read into like the manga and watch the anime, like you'll see that because these creatures have powers, they often find strength and growth in battling and evolving. So it's like there's a difference between that and then like dog fights or whatever in real life.
Cool.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
I just want to put that out there. I mean, I don't even really know what I'm saying. I'm just saying like there's a lot of allusions you can draw from the franchise to real life.
Diplo's in that movie. Did you get to talk to him?
I met him briefly,
Okay.
but I didn't really get to talk to him because my scenes weren't with him.
You're a fan of his music, or
I don't really know a lot of his music.
What kind of music are you into?
I like folk music and indie music. Yeah.
Cool.
Old music. I like jazz. I like punk rock.
I'm going to ask this really obvious question too in the conversation, but it's like a really personal inquiry of mine. Your name,
Yeah.
Justice,
Yeah.
which is a beautiful name.
Thank you so much.
But I've never really met anyone who's named Justice.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
Do you know anyone else named Justice?
There was 2 girls that I met named Justice.
The only person I kind of know is like the baseball player, David Justice from the 90s.
Yeah, it's his last name. Yeah. A lot of last names. Yeah, I've met some last names.
Yeah. Last names,
last
yeah.
names.
But first names, it's like, whoa.
There was a kid, actually like a 9-year-old kid who grew up in the building that I grew up in who was named Justice as well, but it was spelled like Justus, like just us.
Okay.
I meet a lot of people who have those like different variation, like just is,
Yeah.
or which, as a purist, I disagree with. No, but yeah, my name actually, my mom named me Justice because both of my parents are singers, and they thought I was going to become a singer as well. And they said my mom wanted to name me something weird like water or forest or I don't know, something hippy dippy. And
Okay.
then she was like, no, I'll name him Justice. So that way when he becomes a singer, when he's waiting backstage, all the audience will chant, "We want justice. We want justice." And then, so that's why I named Justice. But I disappointed them by becoming an actor instead of a singer.
What do they say about it now? I mean, now that you became an actor.
I mean, because I've had relative success, I think they're happy about it. But
Did you get training in singing?
I indirectly, because I grew up around my parents performing, and I was on stage with them, and I did musicals as a kid, and I do like singing. I love music, and I like singing, but it's definitely more of a hobby than it is a vocation. But it also was tainted for me having singer parents. Whenever I would sing along with the radio, my parents would be like, "Use your diaphragm. Where's your tone? What are you singing about?"
Oh,
I'm like,
man.
"Well, I don't want to sing anymore. Like, you've ruined this."
When did you first feel like what you wanted to do was acting?
Oh, from a young age. Like, I came out the womb quoting Shakespeare. No, I just remember being young and I felt very different from other kids and from other people. And so I became very observant at a young age. And if you look at my baby pictures, or like even as a toddler, my face is just one of, like, I don't even know what's going on. And so I became very observant, and I realized in order to feel normal, I'd had to imitate other people and what I perceived as normalcy. So
Who'd you start imitating?
just like my family members,
Cool.
like, and not like impressions, just like, oh, I see when they're happy, they move their face like this, and when they're sad, they move their face like this, and when they cry, they wail like this, and just general behavioral things. And I kept doing that, and I also fell in love with the melodies in which people spoke. And I used that to become a really good liar at a young age.
What you lie about?
I once told my mom I broke my arm when I didn't break my arm, and I was like crying about it.
How'd you get away with that?
Well, I did it as a joke. Like I made her cry, and then I felt bad, and so I was like, I'm lying. One time in high school, I actually, to get out of class, I told my teacher that I was getting evicted, and I was like, my mom just texted me. My mom just texted me. She told me we're getting evicted. I don't know what to do. And I'm like sobbing. And I'm like, we're not going to have a house. And she's like, I feel so bad. She gave me a hug. She's like, just let me know. You know, you don't have to do the assignments. And then but that never happened. Yeah, but then through lying, through observing people, I kind of formed my own identity and realized that acting was not only just like playing pretend, but also expressing yourself and digging deep and finding those things that that you kind of hide away and using them for a craft, you know?
Cool. It's great to have you in Bogota. Are you doing South America as well for promotion for Detective Pikachu?
I just came from Peru, and now
Okay.
I'm here in Colombia, and then that's it. And then I go to LA. I go back home.
You're doing great work.
Thank you so much.
Doing a great job. You got a bright future ahead of yourself.
That is so
It's been
nice.
Great having you here. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too. Thanks.
Well, first of all, I gotta say that I'm very excited to have you here, both of you. I mean, the first time I ever saw you guys perform was at this festival in Mexico City, Corona Capital,
Sí.
back in 2015.
Yeah.
Sí.
It was pouring rain, man.
Yeah.
Very handy for us because everybody came into the tent.
I know. And it was right before they got canceled, the show got canceled, because
Yeah.
the entire festival got canceled right after you guys
It was
performed.
Jack White, right?
Yeah, Jack
I
White.
remember.
We all turned back to the hotel, and then when we arrived in the hotel, Jack White was already performing. It sucked. But it was great to see you guys back then that first time. And then you guys came back for Carnívora here in Bogota. Came here for the first time, and then you came here for Stereo Picnic, but I didn't get to see those two shows. And now I get to see you guys perform for this very special show. So it's, great to have you here. Welcome to Bogota
Thank you
once
very
again.
much.
Thank you for having us.
I gotta ask one question about this tour. How do you pull it off?
Wow.
Depends.
what
which,
we put
which
it off.
aspect, which aspect
All of it. Let's start off with the dates and how close they're to each
Sure.
other. You know?
Well, last time we came to South America, we did 5 nights,
Back-to-back.
back to back. So we would play the show, and we'd come off stage sometimes really late. You know, Rio was really late. We'd come off at 1:30 in the morning, go back to the hotel, 1 hour, and then we'd fly into a show the next day. This time is a little bit different. We've got some days in between. But
Yeah, this is actually a relatively relaxed,
we're chill.
schedule.
We're chilling.
It doesn't look like it. I mean, it's like when you guys first started doing the Forever tour, you start seeing the dates pile up on the billboards and stuff, and you say, okay, well, they're gonna take a breather, a 2.5 month breather after this, and it's like, no, here's another line.
That's our manager.
It's incredible. And tell me about what it's been like for you guys to tour this new album.
It's been amazing. I think what we've noticed is that the fans are really reacting to the new record, and that's a really positive thing for us.
Obviously, a lot of artists have this fear that they're going to release another record, but everyone just wants to hear the first album when you come and play it live. But we've almost felt like there's like the opposite to that. People are really, really in touch with the new songs, potentially more than some of the songs from the first record. So for us, that's been really positive, and to be able to play longer sets now, to have 2 albums worth of material to play to people means that we can really tell a story on stage, and that's been really good fun. And I think
Ever since you guys started performing, are you guys playing with the same band ever since?
Still the same band. People have come and gone, but at the moment we're back to the original lineup.
How many people are there on stage tonight?
There's seven tonight.
Okay.
So it's going to be a bit of a fiesta.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible. Tell me about the album. Tell me how it was conceived, how long it took, how many songs were written on the road, how many of them happened in the studio, all the...
The album sort of took a little while, and this album for us, we wanted to kind of, we wanted it to mean more to us. You know, we wanted it to have more of an emotional pull. So, you know, we had to sort of wait for these real life experiences to happen. You know, we were writing for a long time, and you know, there's nothing really happening in our lives, and you know, so we waited and waited, and you know, things happened, and we went out and experienced the world, and then we had things to write about, and so it kind of, you know, admittedly it was heartbreak that we had to write about, but you know, some people say that pain makes good music.
Yeah, tell me more about that heartbreak and about how it influenced the making of the album.
I think the main thing that it did is actually brought us closer together. You know, it's like the same thing whenever you have a girlfriend, you lose touch with your friends, not necessarily physically, but you know, a little bit emotionally, because you spend so much emotional energy on that other person in your life, and you know, Josh went through his breakup a little bit earlier than I did, and I wasn't really in the same space as him. I wasn't really able to understand what he was feeling, and then when it happened to me, he was like, yes mate, now we're in the same boat. And so that really gave us the strength to like come back together into the studio, and gave us the kind of the energy to finish the record, because it kind of gave us a purpose again. You know, it was like, wow, hang on a minute, actually we're back to being just me and Josh, and that's a really important thing for us creatively.
How do the other guys in the band get involved in the processes that you guys start off, such as writing and, you know, songwriting?
Well, the band are mostly a live band. You know, they consist of some of our closest friends and people we've known for a very long time. The studio, it's mainly me and Tom, and then when we bring it and transfer it to the live environment, that's where they come in and bring the songs alive in a way that we never really did on record. So there's always that kind of surprising element to it, which, you know, brings more life and more energy to the music.
Where would you say your fans are right now in terms of listening to your songs? Are they? It seems to me like they're obviously not on the radio, and that they may be somewhere else on, you know, digital platforms. Would you see them there? Where exactly are those fans?
We've definitely noticed a huge amount of streaming on this record. You know, when you look at stuff like Spotify, you know, our third biggest market is Mexico City in terms of where our like listenership is, and that's really interesting. It's a great way to be able to see where your fans are. It gives you an indication of where you should go and play your gigs. And also for us, like, the digital age has meant that our music goes around the world in 1 second, and that's really important, because you know, record sales don't really exist anymore. So the only way that you can get heard is by people like streaming you and downloading your music. So you know, the digital age and the internet, I know a lot of artists will sit there and complain about it and say that it's ruining the music industry, but we've sort of found it the opposite.
Yeah. Do you like what's happening right now, as opposed to the nostalgia of radio, vinyl, record sales and stuff?
In terms of content and in terms of music and in terms of art, I think it's bad. I think the attention span has just been completely demolished. I think I've felt that of myself. So, you know, just from personal experiences, it's everything now. You know, it's just and it's quite disposable, which means that, you know, you get a lot of people just sort of rushing records and you know, putting 20 tracks on there just to get on the top of the Spotify charts, and it's a different thing, you know. It's a new thing. I don't think you can go, you know, when computers came around, people didn't go, no, we've got to keep the typewriter. We have to keep the typewriter. You have to move forward with it. It's the same like Uber, you know, like it's technology. It's part of our evolution.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because what you guys do kind of goes against the grain of what is being consumed right now. And that's another one of the reasons why I think it's so cool to have you back in Bogota, because as time goes by, people listen, it seems as though they listen less and less to music, and what you give us is time to appreciate an entire album. You know, it's going against the grain of what's going on, right?
I think that's important. I think as artists, we will always strive to do that, to make albums, because that's what we grew up listening to. That's what we love about music, is that journey that an artist takes you on. We've also really enjoyed not having to like stylistically try and fit into genres that we feel are like popular or mainstream. That's something that we just, I think if you look at all the artists across the last like 10 years, across the beginning of the digital age, the ones that will stick around are the ones that stay true to themselves, rather than just making like music for
for like now.
Yeah,
you know?
I think if you copy the trends, like the trends are good, like, but they're only good when it's the first person who makes that trend. You know, if you think about the sound of Drake, like, yeah, I mean, he made that successful. There's so many artists which try and sound like that, but Drake's good. You know, it sounds good to me. Like the same with I suppose Future, and you saw Designer with that song Panda, which kind of, and then you had the rest of it that follow trying to obtain that. But we've already heard that. So for somebody to break through again, they need to be doing something different. See Rosalia, it's a different thing. It's a new sound. She's kind of getting quite big in that pop world, and I think she'll continue to grow.
Do you like what's going on in the Latin world? Do you follow what's happening in the Latin music pop world?
It's definitely difficult because the channels, our channels in Europe and England especially are very different. So the only thing that I'm aware of that's come out of Latin America is obviously Rosalia, because she's really broken into America.
She's actually European. She's from Spain.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's
So that's weird because like she met everyone thinks that she's Colombian.
And that brings me back to touring and how the intense touring has a lot to do with how money has pretty much gone all over the place in the music industry. Because back then, in the 90s, you could sell your records and make $1 million in a flash. Now you can't really do it with streaming. Does that have a lot to do with touring back to back and playing those gigs?
100%. I think festivals and touring is where you see the direct money that comes from the consumer to the artist. If you think about how much somebody spends on a ticket, they can spend, depending on what country you're in, anywhere from $15 to $50, and if you're Madonna, $150. But that money is kind of going straight to the gig. It's a small system, whereas the Spotify system, they're taking all the money and then they hold all the money. They give some money to the labels, which the labels then distribute at like a royalty rate, which is nothing. So, I mean, the positive about streaming is that once you buy an album once, you only buy that album once. But if you keep streaming an album, that will stream for the rest of time, in theory. So.
Yeah, supposedly.
But we'll be long dead by then, so. It's not about the money anyway. It's just about the good feelings of being around our friends. I think that's the most important thing for us.
Back in 2013, when you made it to the BBC Sound of 2013, you were shrouded a bit in mystery. There was a whole bunch of shadows in the pictures, and we didn't really know who you guys were. And like some of the big executives in the record industry here and in the music industry here, when we started playing you in La X Más Música, had this, we kind of exposed you guys to them through the music videos and the little girl on the video, and I'd like to know what it was like for you guys to make it to that point in the BBC Radio 1 Sound of 2013 list, and how important that was to your career to get you started, or what it really meant for the band.
Yeah, I think, somebody asked me this question about the name Jungle earlier, and he said, why did you pick the name Jungle? And for us, the name Jungle was always about, picking something that was bigger than us as people and bigger than us as like
a concept,
individuals, and we could create within this framework of like a logo. For us it was like it set us free in terms of what we could make, and I think it still does that. And the dancers, and it allows us to do things that if it was just us as a solo artist that we maybe wouldn't be able to do. And I think that the introduction of the dancers, which has been a massive part of our success, is something that we want to see and something that we want to make. I think it's like the truest expression of music, people dancing. And when I grew up, I always used to watch music videos and get a lot of enjoyment from watching people, this symmetry of synchronicity within dance moves. It's really basic, it's like watching two people jump off doing synchronized dive. It's
very
like
satisfying.
if they get it right, you're like, whoa, I want to see another one, and it makes you want to watch it to the end. Skateboarding is another example of that. When somebody does a trick, you always want to watch
watch it complete. You know, you don't want to. If you see someone do a kickflip and it cuts, you're like, oh, well, did he land it?
Yeah.
And you know, with the music videos, a lot of what we do is use like one takes and try to use as much of the original performance as possible, even if they make mistakes, because a lot of the joy comes in watching it, almost like the theatre. It actually happened in real life. You know, it wasn't edited to make them seem better than they are. They're just like delivered as raw talent, and that's what we really believe in. Just that sort of honesty with it.
Does that concept repeat itself through Heavy California, for example? Does it happen again?
Yeah. I think the first album videos were very much based on kind of portraits of, you know, people and confidence, and I think the second album was more of an exploration into the idea of a relationship between two people and the dynamic between, you know, maybe a girl and a boy, or a boy and a boy, or a girl and a girl, and what that meant and how that reflected the music that we were making.
Yeah, I remember asking you this question because it has a lot to do with the dancing on the first videos, and it was that it was really interesting, and it, you know, mesmerized me as a listener and as a fan of the band when I started kind of connecting my own dots around the concept of the first three videos, the Platoon, the Heed, Busy Earning, and seeing, you know, the little girl, and then the adult guys, and then the senior gentleman and it was like this progression of dance throughout your life and how it accompanies you. You know?
Yeah, totally. I mean, what we tried to do is just go with the original idea, and the first thing, you know, whenever we're being creative, it comes down to the first idea is usually the best idea, and that first idea came from, we had a reference picture from some blog of some kid, you know, with a BMX, and it was like he was mid-trick, and it was this concrete background, and that was it. It was black and white picture, and a friend of mine, Charlie, was like, oh, okay, well, let's make this video, and you know, he said, oh, I've just been sent this video of this little girl, she's a breakdancer, and I was like, oh, cool, and he's like, I sent her Platoon, and then what we got back from her was, you know, her dad had moved all the furniture away in this living room, and she was just doing this head spin to Platoon, and we just saw it and was like, wow, you know, we've got to make this happen in any way possible. So from there, you know, it just became this progression of, you know, that's where the Adidas came in. She turned up in Adidas. So the next video, you know, we wanted to build on the theme, so we put them in Adidas and kind of developed like that.
What were you guys listening to as kids when it comes to dance culture and electronic music or any other type of dance culture?
Loads of different stuff. I mean, we grew up listening to like Justice, Daft Punk, Air, a lot of UK hip hop, a lot of American hip hop as well. But I think UK hip hop really is more was more relevant to us.
How is it different from, because like people who will be watching this interview probably will stick American hip hop and
sure.
British hip hop in the same basket.
Well, it's just talking about different. It's the different dialect. You know, it's the accent. It's dialogue. It's talking about things that are relevant to you. You know, when Jay-Z talks about the projects, that's something that we can't understand. But then when someone in the UK raps about like the estate, which is like the English version of a project, then you understand it because it's in your language and it's in that.
Right.
You know, hip hop is very idiosyncratic. You know, it's very much like it's basically like folk music for the modern generation. And what folk music does is tell the story of the culture and the society at that time. And so for us, UK hip hop just told the story of our society in a way that spoke to us more than American society. You know,
Americans usually have this interesting debate about who's the biggest hip hop star in the region. What would you say? Who would you say is the biggest hip hop?
In the UK or in America?
In the UK. In the UK. Who would you say is the best? And who would you say right now?
Well, you'd have to argue that Stormzy is, because he's about to headline Glastonbury. Yeah. So, you know, and that's the sort of resurgence of grime, which is, you know, it's amazing.
But when we grew up, the UK scene was really underground.
A lot of people take it seriously and not in a good note when Stormzy headlines Glastonbury, you know, because it's always been such idiosyncratic of rock culture. Glasto seems to be this totem.
But I think it's a good thing, right, that it's way more open, you know. I think that's the way the world needs to be, and, you know, it needs to incorporate everything, and if it's good and it's people are into it, then it should be up on the stage.
Yeah, sure.
You ever thought about doing hip-hop in any of your records?
I mean,
Well, we effectively tried to make a hip-hop record for the first album. In our heads, we were like, we were listening to a lot of Dilla and...
Yeah, I don't think any sort of modern producer can not be inspired by Dilla. So, and especially when you're making beats at home, everybody listens to that and wants to make donuts. Like, I can't think of anybody who doesn't want to do that.
Crazy, absolutely.
But, you know, I don't know if we can pull it off.
But you've never thought of having like a collaboration or...
We'll see. I mean, the feeling's got to be right and the emotion's got to be right. I can't say what we're going to do in the future, but, you know, we'll see.
Any new songs coming up?
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
You know, I think this new record it's a quick record, so we'll see what happens.
Have major labels ever approached you and said, you know, come on over?
It's not really a thing that we want to consider. I think when you sign into that, you know, essentially labels are banks, and they take a lot of...
We want to try and be as independent as possible for as long as possible. I think we've always enjoyed having complete control over everything that we do, and if we were just to give that away to somebody for like a paycheck, then it just wouldn't feel very honest.
I think it might put a price on our head. You know, if you go and sign a massive deal, then you've got to write a massive song to pay that money off. I'd rather write songs that I want to hear.
What's the hardest thing about being independent nowadays?
Well, I think obviously, you know, it's radio really, and I think people, you know, if you look at big artists, the reason why they're big is because they're on the radio the whole time.
Sometimes most of the stuff that we play on the radio isn't that good.
Well, a lot of it's down to marketing spend. You know, you see artists that have so much money pumped into the campaigns for their records, like so much advertising everywhere, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good record. It just means that the record label have spent a lot of money making that record, and they need to earn it back. So they're gonna they need to put out TV adverts and radio adverts and like billboards everywhere. It doesn't necessarily mean it's good music.
There's one thing regarding this conversation that'd be nice to hear from you. If a kid out there in the region in Colombia, this is going to be nationally broadcast, or if a kid on the station and on the podcast listens to you guys regarding independence, quality, and, you know, looking for your musical dream or finding your musical dream, would really like to hear from you. And it's, I guess, most of the kids that I relate with or talk to want to be famous.
Well, yeah,
know?
that's the wrong start, isn't it?
They really want to get somewhere and they want to do it fast. And I guess it's a part of growing up because, you know, I guess as an artist, everyone wants to make it somewhere.
Yeah, it starts, I mean, we get asked this question quite a lot, and it's, for us, I think, you just mentioned the idea of people wanting to be famous. Like, a lot of people want the end goal, you know, you want to be at the top of the mountain, but what you have to really be in love with is the process, and you have to be in love with, like, making the music, and the people who will make it are the ones who are not thinking about the fame.
Do you see yourselves in the future? I mean, do you look into the future and say, or do you have any goals regarding the future? I guess?
I think it's good not to have very many goals.
I agree.
I think you've got to just take every day as it comes. You know, I'm pretty sure we will continue to make music for Jungle. I'm sure we'll probably make music for other people and write with other people. And
maybe a solo record, you're talking about that?
I definitely know that I want to make music the rest of my life in whatever capacity. But what form that takes, I don't know.
Could be just you just drumming in the little back garden. I mean, you know, music is music, and I think if you really love music, like just sitting at home with the classical guitar is enough to satisfy that urge to create. I think the rest just comes as a bonus.
Well, listen, it's great to have you guys here. You know, I'm a big fan, man.
Thank you.
You know, I can't really conceal it, man. It's great to have you here. Please do come back, and very, very happy to see you perform tonight. You know, break a leg over there.
Thank you very much.
Good meeting you.
Thank you. You too.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Good seeing you.
Este programa fue financiado a través de los recursos del Fondo para el Desarrollo de la Televisión y los Contenidos de la Autoridad Nacional de Televisión.